Yo, yo, what's up, y'all? We out here, Buff Missionary back in these streets. And today, actually just got out of church, and it was pretty dope. It was a student missions emphasis Sabbath for one place on campus, and a couple student missionaries, I believe Trinity, I don't know her personally, but she was in Hawaii. She shared about her experience. And Jordan Anderson, who I know, I worked with her as she was an RA. I was one of the deans a couple of years back, so we worked together there. And little did I know that my story and experience of Palau actually inspired her to go be a missionary. And her experience, I would say, was less than ideal by many means. She talked about how there were a lot of challenges, some things that she didn't really expect, and the kind of dream and the picture perfect that a lot of times we have when we go into things like a student missions year or anything really that we go into and we have high hopes for. It wasn't there, and she felt like it wasn't a space that she could be in. She ended up returning early and was really wrestling and struggling with God about that, because it's like, we go and we step out in faith and we do these things that we believe that God is calling us to do, and then they don't work out the way that we hope they will or think that they will. And it's like, well, what was the point of that? It was really cool for the sake of her experience and sharing that she was able to kind of be at peace and understand that God is working on some things, on her working on some things, and she was able to kind of see that and appreciate that, even though she doesn't know where it's going or what the end goal is. And I think that's a valuable lesson to learn in life, that you don't always have to know the end. You don't always have to know every little detail about how something is going to go to be at peace about it. And if you can appreciate growth and the idea of a process, one of the illustrations that she used I really liked was this idea of thinking of the most pristine basketball court for all you ballers out there. And sometimes over time, wear and tear, you have those little black streaks that come from the sneakers. It's just a part of the game. It's how it happens. But how do you get those streaks off the court? Well, a lot of people will come and they'll scuff their shoes on the marks, trying to rub it to create some heat, to create some pressure, and it actually helps to do that. But in our lives, our experiences are kind of like that, right? Through wear and tear, we end up getting these skid marks and these scuffs on us. And it takes heat and pressure to get those out, or to remove those and to restore the court back to its pristine status. I think it's such a simple concept, but it's not one that people readily embrace, right? We want to be able to grow, we want to be able to level up, but we want to do it without the pain. We want to do it without the heat and without the pressure. But just like that court, it is impossible for the court to be restored to its best and most beautiful status without that pressure being put on. Now, it actually strikes a chord, because on multiple different occasions in different places where I have lived and worked, I was the one responsible for cleaning the basketball court. Whether it was my time in Palau as the PE teacher at the elementary school, I'm the one who was responsible for mopping that entire court. It was crazy. Getting all the dust off and all this kind of stuff. It was a wild job to do. Even when I worked at my high school and played on the basketball team there, I kind of was one of the people tasked with cleaning the gym, and the floor in particular, buffing it. We actually had a machine with these rough, almost like a Brillo pad kind of a thing, but just a big one. It would spin and you'd run the machine, and it would buff out everything that was on the floor. You had to sweep it, you had to dust it, then you had to mop it, and then you had to buff it. So I was like in charge of all that. It is a process. It is a process. And I can only imagine if it was my skin that was getting that Brillo pad spinning at high speed, rubbing to take off all the grit, grime, and the skid marks, it wouldn't be pleasant. And growth hardly ever is, but once we embrace that that's what the experience, that's what it takes to grow, then I think that it makes it easier for us to appreciate growth and the process. So it was really awesome being there. And looking around, there were so many other former student missionaries in the house, which was great. There were two. I mentioned the girl Trinity who shared part of her experience. She was in Hawaii, and she shared a story about being exposed to the waves and the sets of waves, and kind of having a panic attack, being out there, having never surfed before, but learning, and just kind of that reality of between point A and point B, we might feel like we know where we're going, but there might be a storm in the middle of that. And we can't control that. But who are you relying on during those times? Are you having faith? I like the point that she brought out, because she compared her experience. She juxtaposed that with the story of Jesus walking on water in Mark 6. And it was interesting because when you think of the disciples and their experience, it's like, yeah, their experience with being on the water, but they're still freaking out even though they're in a place that they're normally comfortable, right? And they had just come from the amazing experience of feeding the 5,000 of service, and they were moving into another area of service and crossing the lake. But during this time in the middle, someone that they had been with for like every waking moment over the span of probably a year or two, they didn't recognize him in this moment because of their own fear. And it's like, man, how do we really have to, it's an important thing to really stay focused on God. Because even for those people, the disciples who were with Jesus all the time, they didn't recognize him, and they're seeing him, which is kind of wild. They thought he was a ghost, and they thought they were dying and all this kind of stuff. So how much more so do we need to keep our focus on God? I was thinking about, man, just how easy it is for my mind to wander and to end up in places where it shouldn't be, right? Completely realizing that I didn't study my devotions yesterday. Usually I've been consistent of getting on these videos lately. I love it because it helps keep me accountable, but I kind of flipped the script. I worked remote yesterday, so I didn't go into the office. So I didn't go in the morning, didn't wake up early. So I didn't have that experience, and I felt it bite me on the back end of the day, where it was just like, man, it was hard for me to stay more positive and what's a good word? Just to have a good outlook about where I was at the end of the day. And it's a lot of that is because of what I missed out on the beginning of the day. So it's super important for us to keep our focus on God. And that's the thing that helps us to get through and to not trip up and to be afraid when we shouldn't be, or to not recognize Christ when he's coming to us in those moments. So I really appreciated both of those. And I appreciated, at the bottom line, just the fact that we had some more opportunities for student missionaries to get out there and share their stories. It's so valuable. It's so important. And a lot of these things that they experienced, being able to trust in God, being able to see things in a different way, being put in positions that help you identify your calling and what you're here for. Unless we take the steps, unless we listen to the impulse that God is trying to put on our minds and our hearts to go and to serve, I don't believe that we get that. Because when we stay in the comfort zone, when we stay in that little bubble, how can you grow? Yeah, it's safe. Yeah, it's comfortable. That's why it's called the comfort zone. Yeah, there's no pain. There's no buffing. There's no scrubbing. There's no getting caught in between the waves and freaking out because you're in the comfort zone. But you can't grow there. You can't. So we have the choice to either step out in faith according to what God has called us to do, or we can sit and chill. But if we do, we cannot get upset that our lives aren't going anywhere, because that's on us. So, as always, I'm always a proponent of student missions. Y'all know this. That's why it's the buff missionary in these streets. But I want to encourage you, look for your ways to serve. Something that both of them emphasized was that they're basically talking about the mission mentality. Service can look like going for a year or two overseas. It can look like being a part of the music team in your church. It can look like doing something here and there throughout the week. It can look like being positive and trying to have a really good impact on the people around you at work. It can look like all of those things, and all of it counts. All of that matters. It's all important and it's all valuable, but and all of them require you to get out of your comfort zone. So embrace that, embrace the challenge, embrace the opportunity to get out of your comfort zone. And that's where you'll find the growth. And I think I'll close out this video, if I can recall this thought correctly. It was a piece from Trinity's talk. And how did she say it? Let me frame it like this. A lot of times when we're in the waiting period, right, we feel like we know what we're doing over here and there's this kind of gap, and then we're waiting for the next thing to come. How do we spend the time that we wait? And she worded it like this: in the waiting time, do what waiters do and serve. I like that. Definitely a nice play on words there. In the waiting time, while you're waiting for the thing that's next to come, you're not sure what it is, do what waiters do and serve. And I love it because, again, you can find so much purpose and intentionality through seeking to literally engage with life where you are. It's easy for people in school to think, well, I'm starting school, I'm starting this class, I'm not going to graduate for another 4 or 5 years, depending on your program. And that becomes everything. And they wonder why the experience of university sucks. Well, in the time when you're waiting, serve. Do what waiters do and serve. And I think this can apply to any aspect of life, no matter where you are. Every one of us is in a position where we're starting something and we're either working or we're doing something that isn't quite the end goal for ourselves. Again, it relates more in school, but I think it can apply to all areas of life. We're all moving in a direction, right? We're all setting goals and hoping to achieve new and bigger things. We're all trying to level up. But in the moments while you're working towards that, serve. Do what waiters do and serve. And I think this can bring so much more value and positivity into your experience. And I think you'll find that it's easier to be more engaged on a day-to-day basis. I think that you'll find that you find a little bit more purpose in the things that you do on the day-to-day. So I think that's really valuable. I love student missions. I love the opportunities and the learning that comes from going and growing, and always going to be a supporter of that. So looking forward to the next time when student missions is out here getting to share and I can go support once again. So yeah, do your part too. Serve. You out here waiting. Let's get to serving. All right. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.